And awesome. Welcome everyone to 6 Degrees of Separation. This is a lunch hour fireside conversation between myself, Ayo Adegbiji, and a couple of my friends, Stephen and Ansu. Stephen and Ansu, I know we're still going to do introductions and all of that, but can I just get you to do a professional wave? You know, you have different types of wave. You have the royal wave, you have the casual wave, informal wave, professional wave. And Ansu and Stephen are joining from 2 different geographies. Stephen is joining from the kingdom in the Middle East, and Ansu is also joining from the kingdom as well, the United Kingdom. So we are all joining from one kingdom or the other kingdom. Awesome. So let's set a bit of a context. You probably saw this in the promo. The richest people in the world look for and build networks. Everyone else looks for work. How do you engage with that? Do you agree with that? Feel free to type that in the text chat. I hear some sound in the background, so if you're not speaking, we would appreciate if you can be muted for the time being. Okay. And of course, everyone will be familiar with this quote, your network is your net. Okay, I'm just going to leave that there. And a bit of introduction about me. I'm an executive coach, a leadership development architect, consultant. I facilitate career transition coaching or conversations or development sessions. I like to think and imagine myself as a change catalyst, either on the individual level, team level, or organizational level. What more? My professional life spans close to 30 years, working across different industries, management consulting, fast-moving consumer goods. Right now, I have dual role, working in the academia for a business school, but I also have my practice. I've worked in across the years, worked with leaders from different geographies, circulatory 40 nations of the world, and I'm still working with leaders. It's a pleasure to do all of that, but it's not just going to be me rambling on talking about myself. Hey, we're here to connect, we're here to network, we're here to have conversations. So you're important. We're looking to hear from you. So we want it to be interactive, empowering, and insightful, and of course, very, very useful. Tell us in the text chat, myself and my friends will be keen to hear what one thing you're looking forward to in today's session. We want to bear that in mind as we go ahead. What one thing are you looking forward to in today's session? Feel free to type that in the text chat. Okay. We want to make it as interesting and engaging and relevant and beneficial as can be. Feel free to type that in the text chat. What one thing you are looking forward to? Okay. We are hoping people will get typing. Okay, so feel free to type that in the text chat. More connections. Thank you, Stephen. Looking forward to networking. Okay, that's good. People are actually looking forward to networking. That's great. Okay. And then if you are looking forward to networking, my question for you is now, what will you do to facilitate that? Okay, so I'm going to leave it there for now. Okay. And one more thing I just want to say is to encourage you to stay till the end with us. Good things come to those who wait. There'll be 1 or 2 things, freebies. So I encourage you to stay with us till the very end. Okay, so here are my friends and my guests today. We have Ansumana Baymaro, Managing Director of TPG Angelo Gordon in London. And we have Stephen McCallion, Director, Hexagon Investor Care Center in Saudi Arabia. Our paths crossed a few years back, and one way or the other, we have managed to keep in touch. These are great people when it comes to relationships, building relationships, connecting, and all of that. Perhaps they might say 1 or 2 things if they recall how we met. On a fun note, as I was just reading, the bio just prior to this, I just noticed that, yes, we did meet at Imperial College Business School, but these are also great cerebral people, both of them having, distinctions in their MBA, global MBA from Imperial College Business School. Of course, that's not why we're here, but I couldn't just help pointing out that fun fact, actually. Okay, so let us get this party started. Let me stop share and ask Stephen, Ansu, thank you so much out of your busy schedule, and of course, it's even late in the day for you, Stephen. You have managed to come here. Tell us a little bit about yourself as we get this party started.
Oh, hi. So really good to see everyone, see you. Actually, I think I might have a bit of feedback coming from the background here. I'm not sure what it is, but today in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, it's actually the weekend here. So today is a day off for me. So yeah, so we did meet, and actually Ansu and I were in the same syndicate group at Imperial. So we know each other really, really well. And so I'm Irish, I'm from Northern Ireland. Let me see, I've had a career, I don't know, 30 years plus, moving around different industries in different parts of the world. I've been in the Middle East for about 10 years, and I would say, and we can come back to this, I'd say through very, very conscious and deliberate networking, have moved into adjacent jobs, so started off in marketing, and I've gone right across from Marcoms, brand, corporate comms, government affairs, and now working with incoming investors into the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So all those are, whereas some of the people I started working with are still in marketing jobs. For me, I think I've kept my life and my career very interesting and always very sort of alive by going and doing more interesting things. So, and that's all been very much through developing networks and having very clear outcomes about when I do that. So that's where I am.
Awesome. Thank you. Ansu.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name's Ansu. Working compliance finance, as you know my firm, TPG Angelo Gordon. I am Sierra Leonean by heritage. So for all the Nigerians out there, you cannot entirely claim me, although my mum's dad was Nigerian. I grew up in London, so proud Londoner. And what else to say? I've always been somebody who has been proud to kind of come from a humble background and have risen through the ranks. And we're kind of going to speak about one of the power keys, to do that, which is other people, right? And sometimes we kind of really focus on, if I just work harder, or if I just figure this out, or if I just gain this insight, then I will jettison some of my peers and climb the ladder and achieve all my goals. And actually, oftentimes it's actually looking around you. How can you help others, and how can they help you to get where you're going, and you get a lot further. So that's a bit about me.
Awesome, Ansu. Thank you, Ansu. Thank you, Stephen. And thank you once again for making it a date. While still expecting people to type in the text chat what they're looking forward to in the session, let's get it started. Stephen, you already set the ball rolling by talking about your journey and how you had to consciously network, and how you have consciously networked. And you also touched on how it has led to successful transitions out of your comfort zone, out of where you were originally. So already that is given an indication in terms of the benefits, but let's make no assumptions here. Let's come to the basics. What exactly is networking, and why should anyone bother to network?
Okay, so for me, what is it? What does it mean? Why is it? Well, why should someone do it? And what are the benefits? I think I come at that from the context of having spent my entire kind of adult life and career moving around to different countries. So I think I have different industries, different countries, lived and worked in 9 different countries. So when you go to a new place, you don't know anyone at all. So developing a network there is all about, for me, it's been about, okay, who do I know who knows someone there, or do I know someone there? So that's the kind of context I'm coming from. So I have very successfully used that, say, a number of years ago when I moved even from London to Dublin, I did not know a single person because I'm from the north of Ireland. So I ended up using my network. This is all pre-LinkedIn and pre-internet to find out, well, who do I know? And then tapping into calling people up, getting contacts, getting phone numbers and calling them up and meeting people and developing a network like that. So for example, joined a tennis club through that network. That tennis club helped me to meet most of the friends and the social life I had in Dublin. And from that, ultimately led to me finding new jobs and finding opportunities, but also I think really importantly, I think it's really important to say that the networking is not one way. It's a two-way, multi-way thing. So I have from that, and that network, I still have that. Some friends from that network help those people to connect with others. This is new friends, new connections. Someone needs help with a lawyer. Someone needs help with whatever it might be, and opportunistically looking for opportunities to connect my friends and my network with others. Not when they ask. Sometimes they don't know they need it. When you say, hey, you know what? There's someone I think that you would find interesting to have a connection with. I think you'd have lots in common, and actually taking those opportunities to do. And it's got to the point for me where I don't even think about doing that. If you ask me to describe some of that, I kind of do it all the time. So it's become sort of second nature. And then that's sort of, again, opportunistically finding connections and helping other people sometimes when they don't know they need it, or that it would be useful for them.
Interesting that it has become second nature for you. And I know not many people, can really, really say that. I wondered if Ansu can reflect on, what is it about networking? Because I don't think many people can. And, prior to formally starting this session, I was talking about last week, facilitating a leadership development session for a group of leaders from various nations. And it was about building social networks and capital. And one person wouldn't participate in the icebreaker, which involved getting up and connecting with people. And because they weren't comfortable doing that, so what is it about networking that people are actually somewhat reticent about, or hate or dislike or uncomfortable about, and how how can people navigate that space?
Great question, Eddie. So come back to sorry, come back to the first question mentioned around how we met 3-4 years ago, right? So I was thinking about doing my MBA, and I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I get the best out of my MBA? And so the best thing to do is to research and start reaching out to people, having conversations. And I was one of the first people that I reached out to and said, listen, I'm thinking of doing this. I can see that you're a career exec coach at the university. I'm on the verge of signing up to this MBA. I want to get the best out of it. What can I do? And he went through and he gave me this list of different things that I should do and consider, and people that I could speak to. And again, I just use that as an example of how sometimes it's not about whether or not you want to have conversations. I'm not even going to use the word network. It's not about whether or not you want to. People don't know this about me, but I'm naturally introverted, right? So I can see that there's somebody who is, and I'm not going to call you out, there's someone who has joined, who I know has used the term stranger danger, right? And that is often me, right? I go in a room, go in a new situation. Intrinsically, I'm like, I don't know these people. I don't really want to speak to them. I haven't got the energy. What happens if the conversation doesn't go well? But you have to have those conversations, because when you have those conversations, doors begin to open. You begin to feel a lot more calm. So having that conversation with Ayo, having there you go, yeah, introversion can be a real barrier. So that first thing of, I am scared to network because I don't necessarily feel comfortable having conversations with people. I think that's one of the biggest things that stop people. What I'd say to you there is, if you really understand the value of speaking with people and having conversations, then it begins to get you over. It almost never goes away, that emotional pain of having conversations with strangers, right? That almost never goes away, but you get far more better at handling yourself, that emotional reaction. The second thing I'd say that stops people from either having initial conversations or developing relationships, is they feel that it's not genuine, right? So you got to remember that different relationships will stay at different levels. You've got some relationships, you're going to be great friends, you're going to be buddies, you know, when you have kids or get married, you invite them. And there's going to be some people who you speak to once or twice a year, and that's perfectly fine. You have that interaction, you like them, they like you, but you both derive value. So on those two things, I'd say, number one, you know, remind yourself of the value. And then number two, know that always be genuine, but know that some relationships are largely transactional, whereas others, they become transformational, they become genuine, they become, well, they're always genuine, but they become more meaningful and more personal. And that's fine for relationships to stay at different levels.
Awesome, awesome. So just being pragmatic, being realistic about it, different relationships, and potentially can offer different things about, you know, about them as well. Very, very interesting. Interesting. Now, before we go further, and earlier on we were talking about this, and there's something you said that just brought that to mind in terms of preparing before you get into networking. And I have a book here. It says, Taking the Work Out of Networking, Taking the Work Out of Networking. And when I reflected on that book, and what I decided was that if you want to take the work out of networking, you may need to do the work before the networking. And part of that work is having the conversation with yourself before you have conversation with others. So I wondered for both of you, you know, if you can dive deeper into, and Stephen, you were just reflecting, you are straight from a networking event actually before coming to this one, you know, so I wondered if you could reflect on how people can prepare for a networking opportunity such that they maximize and optimize the networking opportunity. What's your routine?
So yeah, I have come from a networking opportunity, which was actually an International Women's Day event at the Irish Embassy here in Riyadh. But the one I'm thinking about actually was last night I got invited to a dinner in Riyadh. So at that dinner we had, I don't know, 15 people. So you've got Americans, someone from India, Lebanese, Singaporean, Chinese, Irish, from all over the place. But actually, I realized when I saw the invite earlier in the day, there were some very, very senior people. So what I did was I went and did some Googling and LinkedIn research on all the people who were there, just to understand who they were, what they were from, the background. See do I know anyone who knows any of these people? Do we have mutual connections? So I was able to do that research. Then when I got there, I actually got there a bit early, deliberately walked around the block a bit, but I sort of was steeling myself to go into that dinner. I could easily have actually made an excuse not to go because it was quite late, but I thought it would be very useful. But given the seniority of the people, I was saying to myself, you know, you deserve to be there. You have a role, and you actually are going to be part of the glue who's there. There are 3 people there whom I work with. I pre-briefed everyone to say, make sure we go there. Don't sit with the people you know. So make sure we spread ourselves around. Make sure if I see someone sitting beside someone you know, it's a lost opportunity. But I made sure that I went there, and someone who works with me here, who knew less people, let me make sure I introduce her to some of these other people. So I did my prep. I made sure that we had some outcomes in mind, some business related outcomes. And from that dinner, I actually ended up spending half my time hopping around the table, introducing other people. We came away with 3-4 follow-ups as well that are business relevant, and made some connections, used the phone to get some connections, followed up on WhatsApp. So all these things were very much not random. They were very much pre-planned and pre-thought through. And actually, at the end of the day, myself and my colleagues got much more out of that than I could have sort of anticipated. And I think part of that was down to thinking about it in advance and thinking about the outcomes we would like to have.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen. Any thoughts from Ansu? And I see there are a number of things coming up in the text chat. I see Ildiko, and we're talking about, preparing to optimize a networking opportunity. Ildiko, it looks like you are actually reading my notes. One of the things I also have here is leading with curiosity. Okay. And I think it helps when you are going into a networking scenario, leading with curiosity, being genuinely curious about people, where they're coming from, what they do, what energizes them. And this can inform the questions you ask. And there is something about drawing out from people what they have to offer with your curiosity, with your rapt attention, genuine interest in them. So leading with curiosity definitely helps. Thinking about not overthinking things, okay? Not getting into analysis paralysis, definitely thinking about genuine connections, being open to possibilities as well. Stephen has talked about the planned aspect of it, being strategic, being deliberate. But in addition to that, and if I may add, being open to possibilities, because you might have your mindset on connecting with certain types of people, whereas certain opportunities open up that could lead to other things. I think it also helps to practice a bit of self-compassion, going into that session, not expecting too much about yourself. And even if in trying to say some things, you trip over yourself, not making light of it would also definitely help. And one final point I would say is that balancing warmth with competence. Obviously, people want to impress other people, but balance warmth, balance helping other people feel comfortable with you as well, balancing warmth with competence, balancing noticing something good about other people can help them, because some other people could approach it with some apprehension as well, and you might be the one to unlock their being comfortable with making the most of it. I wonder if Asu can add a few thoughts to that.
Yeah, no, really powerful. I think I can't add to anything that you just said there, or Stephen. The only comments, I'll take a slightly different tact. Number one, sometimes you walk into a room and it's not that you're overwhelmed, but you just think, where do I start? If you moved into a new neighborhood, you moved home, you would walk around that neighborhood, you would be very polite to neighbors. You drive around, etc. You begin to get familiar. So I use that very same approach when I go into a new space. I try and just walk around, say hello to people, especially if I get there early. Being there early actually is super great, because there's slightly less pressure. And if you can already begin to feel like I wouldn't say own the room, but you're comfortable in the room, by the time other people start coming, you're in your element. That's the first thing I'd say. The second thing I'd say, again, to get over yourself, right, is don't give it two hoots. And that sounds a bit flippant, but sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And if you go in with the mindset of, look, this is I'm actually here to meet new people, make new friends, and something might come of it, something might not. I might have great conversation with some people. I might have great conversation with one person that'll make it worth it. And if you kind of depressurize, you'll get more out of it. The last meaningful thing I'd say is for the interactions and sessions and events that really do matter, prepare, right? So prepare your story. So what do you do? Prepare a couple of lines. Interesting story. How's your day today? Just a couple of things that you're going to say, and try and find out who's going to come in the room and who's going to be there. Because if you're talking to someone, they're like, oh yeah, Stephen, yeah, I know, I see that you've been in Saudi and you've worked at a couple of places before. Stephen will be like, oh, okay, this person's done some research on me. Exactly. And there's an interaction. So for the really important ones, do some preparations and be mindful about, and this is a power key right here, be mindful about third-party motivation, right? If you know what other people might want from you when you go into a space, it will really direct the kind of conversations that you have. And how you prepare what you're going to say and what you're going to say. So that preparation and being mindful of the recipient and what value they might derive from interacting with you, a power key.
Awesome. Thank you for all the interactions in the text chat. I just want for us to just dive deeper into a question here. If you don't know who people are, how do you decide who to approach?
What I tend to do when I've done this is approach some people who look uncomfortable, they look like they're worried about being there, or they're uncomfortable, they're not sure. Sometimes I go and talk to those people, because they are very often people who've got the most interesting things to say. Once they get comfortable, then you know, all things are possible. So they may be someone who's an introvert who's actually having a hard time doing exactly what we're talking about. So I tend to do that myself, and then, you know, you see someone else, you grab someone else, you introduce them, then you make sure those guys are comfortable, then move on and talk to someone else. Awesome. That's one way to.
So look out for somebody that seems to need help.
Sometimes, exactly, but I think it's, you know, it's a decent thing to do, and yeah, it's sort of an approach that's worth.
I back that up. You're right. Because sometimes you walk in a room and you don't know who to speak to initially, right? So you can see within a couple of seconds there's just a little bit more eye-to-eye contact with someone who wants some help, right? Who wants to chat, and you just read, hey, how you doing? Yeah, my name's da-da, and you get going. So that is kind of the icebreaker. The other thing is, and this is loaded with bias and loaded with our own intuition. But after a period of time, once you're halfway through the event, you then need to make a decision about who do I need to speak to, right? And I can't answer that question. That is something that is honed over time. You just have a sense, that person. And sometimes it's through conversation. Oh yeah, I've been speaking to blah blah blah. Okay, mental note, let me try and go and speak to that person. Other times it's just from watching. But you should never leave an event. And the hardest thing to do in an event is to walk away from someone it's a really warm conversation, you have a great conversation, but you spend the whole night speaking to one person.
Yeah.
But you know that there is more value speaking to a few others.
I've just had that experience at this lunch I was at. So I met some people I was very comfortable with, but I actually said, hey, you know what? I'm going to go and mingle, because I know these people. So there's lots of other people I could go and meet. I think also sometimes, again, going to an event with a purpose. So I remember one time when I was living in Dubai, there was a particular person I wanted to get to know, and I got in touch with the organizers, and I actually managed to make sure that they had me sitting beside that person. So it appeared to that person to be reasonably, you know, random, but it was absolutely purposeful
very strategic.
And you know, we got on very well, blah blah blah, and then we followed up, and you know, and then developed a working relationship. And again, I had some business work-related purpose from that. Now that was a little bit fortuitous because I happened to know someone who knew the organizer. But again, that was based on my own network.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stevens. Thank you, Ansu. There's a great question here, and thanks, Timothy, for calling that out, because it occurred to me as the earlier conversation was going on. And the question from Timothy is, how do you exit conversations gracefully that may be taking up a lot of time? And there are two things, even before we go to answer that. One is noticing when the other person feels done with the conversation. And the other one is when you need to exit or want to exit. First, let me just talk about noticing. There's something about body language. I picked it up somewhere else. When people are locked into a conversation with you, their body will be fully aligned with you. When they are keen to explore other possibilities, conversation, they'll begin to open up and tilt that. There could be two things here. Number one, it could signify they are opening up for other people to come into the conversation, or it could also indicate they are keen to exit that conversation with you. So noticing body cues will be very, very useful, particularly when people begin to look away from you twice. That could be a good signal. So now let's try and exactly, they're checking out other people. Okay, so maybe they are beginning to share 50% of their gaze. You know, it's not 100%. They're not 100% locked in with you. They're not even 90% locked in with you. They're beginning to share that 50-50 or even dangerously getting to 60-40. Obviously, you don't want it to. So how do you exit? I think Stephen touched on this, but one of the things to do is to affirm what you have gotten out of it. It's been great to know you. I've learned one more thing about this company or that. It's been exciting, and I would love us to keep in touch. And I'm sure you would. So you could exchange contacts at then. You could also talk about. I'm sure you will be happy to connect and circulate with other people. Perhaps if we want to exchange contacts now, so we can keep in touch, take the conversation further. You know, something like that would be useful. I wondered what Ansu and Stephen have to say.
So look, again, coming back to my introvert nature, sometimes I don't want to keep in contact with you. I just want to get the heck out of here, right? So when that happens, it's true, right? And Aya said something really profound. That opening up, it works, you know. So before it's okay, cool, and then you just start to tilt your body and put your foot out to the. Some people read the sign. At work, the execs, again, you know, it's just a sign, and we all do it amongst ourselves. When it's time, you just look at your watch. Even if you haven't got a watch, just pretend it's a watch. Just you do that too. Most people, again, being gracious, they would read the sign. And when they don't, a great trick that I've learned, and it's taken me many years of practice because I'm very, very polite, very kind. I want to, end it in a nice, slow way. But I've now learned, listen, time is so precious. You can just say, listen, it's been great catching up. I don't want to keep you from speaking with others and getting the most out of this. So, get the best of tonight. I'm gonna, walk around to meet a few others as well. So I'm sure we'll see you again. Take care. And you can say that 20 times before you go out to the event, so that it just, you have it to hand. But sometimes it is just, don't want to keep you. I know your time is precious. I know you've come here to speak to others. Have a good time, connect with others. I'm gonna speak to a few other people as well. So see you later. And it works. We are there. Yeah, there to network.
I've tried that myself. Yeah, so things like, it's also sometimes you don't want to leave someone standing by themselves. So you might grab someone else, introduce them, leave, say, I know you're busy. Or as I said earlier on, look, I've got to leave soon, so I've got to go and mingle with some other people. So great to see you. I'll be in touch. There's ways of doing it that it doesn't sound rude at all. But yeah, the last thing I would like to do is leave some person I can see who's uncomfortable feeling sort of stranded. And I've seen myself say, look, I'm going to go meet this person. Do you want to come with me as well? You introduce them, and then you can go and, I'd say butterfly the room. But I remember also, again, back to my experience living in Dublin, because I was a bit of an outsider, and I went there and I ended up with, and also university, having different groups of people. You can see sometimes you go to an event and you see the same people in the same kind of corners with each other. I used to take the role of introducing those people to each other, do the introductions, and then leave them to it, and then go and do the same with someone else. So always, gluing and connecting, and seeing the bit, and actually also sometimes just watching to see how some people got on with each other, who were not the same kind of people. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Doesn't always work, but always open to being, surprised at what comes out of helping other people to meet others that they wouldn't have done if you hadn't, intervened, basically.
Awesome. Let's dive a little bit deeper into what happens during the networking conversation. Okay, so as I was telling the group of leaders last week, there's what you call the networking rituals. So obviously you are meeting, you're greeting, you're having the small talk, and then you're exploring potential areas of connection, and then once the connection is struck, then obviously you can build on that. What sort of questions would ensure a conversation is very, very engaged, very, very insightful, And you know, it's refreshing and enjoying. What sort of open-ended questions should people be asking?
I mean, I think it very much depends on the context. But one thing, so here in Riyadh, I mean, and the life here is, I've got a lot of friends from different places, and some of them are locals, and some of them are very international. I do think I've gotten to the point where sometimes you want to go to a networking event and have a topic that you would like to explore, for example. So if the conversation is, you know, is light, or there's a gap, you sort of take the opportunity to say, hey, I saw something recently on XYZ, here's my view, or hey, what do you think? So sometimes, you know, it's reading, or it tends not to be about religion or politics. It's about some kind of current event. It could be about AI and the share price of NVIDIA. It could be about, you know, there was something I went to recently where people were talking about, you know, life transitions. So, you know, someone had a grandchild, someone had a baby, you know, my daughter had her first boyfriend, you know, these kinds of transitional points. But I did, you know, on that same vein, I'd gotten to the point where I said, someone asked me at a dinner, Stephen, what do you think? And I said, you know what? I actually don't have an opinion, and I'm happy to pass on this because I just don't know. And actually that took some, you know, confidence to be able to say, hey, what, you know, I don't know. And actually that's okay. And I think people saw it as very honest. I'm happy to pass and listen in and contribute if I can, but I just don't have the knowledge on that point.
Awesome answer.
Yes, good question. All very situational, context specific, and also the type of person that you're speaking to. So I'm going to go outside of the typical networking big room scenario, because networking is far broader than that. Nowadays we get lots of LinkedIn messages, and every now and again I'd encourage that the one-on-one, right? You actually connect with people just for a coffee or just for a chat, sometimes just a 20-minute Zoom chat. And what I would say is two things. Number one, you know, those interactions over a period of time can actually lead to a deepening of that relationship and value going both ways. Sometimes people think, well, if I had the conversation and it's just a chat, then that is, I've ticked the box. You haven't ticked any box apart from wasting your time and that other person's time, right? If you have something that you want to share, or you have something that you want to gain, those interactions are far more meaningful when someone says, hey, I really appreciate you giving me the time. I really want to get your insights on this thing. Or I've had this experience. What are your thoughts here? Well, that's really interesting that you said that. Listen, you know, I've thought about it, and after reading or speaking to some people, this is what I thought, and this is why. Those kind of interactions and exchanges, they stay with you. They deepen your interest, so you're more likely to remember them, and you're more likely to say yes the next time. And just don't go through the motions of having a chat, because as you get more senior, as you get older, just having a chat isn't usually good enough unless you become friends, and then there's a different type of value that's coming from it. But those additional networking, one-to-one conversations, go in with you know, original thought or contributions and insight, and actually seek to draw from that person. It makes it so much more meaningful.
Awesome. By this time, I'm becoming more and more convinced that somehow a copy of my script is being leaked out to Ildiko. I was just trying to make a judgment call in terms of the next question, and I have here sustaining the relationship. I was going to, and yeah, so so we might as well go in that direction. So you've met somebody, you have a good relationship, you've had a good conversation over a period of time. How do you sustain that relationship such that it's mutually beneficial? How do people do that? I know in one of the sessions at actually business schools a few years back, and we're talking about this, Somebody said what they actually do is that they form a group of their friends, you know, and they have a platform, and they sort of on an annual basis just decide where they want to go in the world, you know, and you know, and that's how they decide. So which geography, which country are they going to go? Maybe they go on a joint holiday or whatever, and sort of keep in touch. Somebody else in the session last week talked about, you know, being part of a squash club. You know, so different people obviously have different ways they do things. So I wondered, you know, what your tips are in terms of how people can sustain relationships, particularly professional relationships, over the long term. I'm suspecting that one of the laws of networking will be relevant here, which is give. And somebody said it's actually the first law of networking. So is to give. What do you bring to the table? What can you give people? Ideas, information, you know, contacts, like Stephen has said. So how do we sustain professional relationships over time?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to start on that one. I think number one, I remember when I was at Grant Thornton, so maybe 15 years ago, the partner said to me, he said, Ansi, people always complain about networking and how they don't like it, and how they, you know, especially early on in your career, your network is quite small. And he said, it's not about how many people you meet, it's about how many people you stay in contact with, and it snowballs, right? And that stuck with me. And again, that was 15 years ago. And oftentimes we meet people, they're great people, we just don't stay in contact. And then eventually, maybe 10 years later, you might want to ask them a question that, and they're not likely to, you know, you're not likely to register on their level of you know, important people to respond to and help. So that's the first thing. The second thing is social capital, right? So this idea of social capital, us having certain social network groups, that there's some kind of reciprocity, right? And so you've kind of touched on it, that we give and we gain. And I think that's so important. Sometimes people, it becomes purely transactional, and we all hate leeches. We all hate people that stay in contact just to get, and they never offer to give, even if they have nothing to give. Just offer to give. Just, oh, I saw this. I thought you might be interested. Oh, you came to mind today. That conversation we said. And so just staying in contact. I've got people who have stayed in contact. I'll use one example. A guy who stayed in contact. We worked together maybe. I'll use two examples. 10 years. Both of them were 10 years. This first example, we were in contact for 10 years. You know, probably once a year connect with me, and would have a nice little chat. He'll tell me about what he's doing. It's a pleasant chat. I'd learn about what he's doing. I'd share. That's it. That's fine. I was able this year to give him a piece of business, right? Because he worked at a firm that was doing something that was relevant to the firm that I'm working at and I need, right? And already that was warm contact. And another example is somebody who gave me landed my current role. And the reason why they landed me my current role is because we've been in contact for 10 years. They're a recruitment consultant, and they've always helped me with when I had challenges or I had questions. They gave me advice, and then guess what? An opportunity came up, and they're like, "You're the right person," you know. And I thought of you, and the rest is history. So, just kind of, I would encourage people that staying in contact, even if you don't see the value at the point, it snowballs, and in due course, many relationships will have an enriching impact on you and your life.
Awesome. Just before Stephen responds or adds to that, feel free to read the text chat and make any contributions. And if there's you have a burning question you want us to tackle, I know some people have been very, very engaging in the questions they're asking. Feel free to type yours as well in the text chat. So let me come to Stephen. You know, if you have any additional, you know, input on that.
Yeah, I think, I agree with Ansu. So the people, and I have experience with people who are not living in a world of hang on, how do you say that word?
Reciprocity.
Thank you. Just couldn't get it right there. Thanks. People I know who show up every couple of years and say, "Hey, look, I'm looking for a job. Can you help?" If you help them out, they don't even tell you what happened 2 years later. They show up, same thing. So over time, my appetite to really go out of my way to help wanes, although I am of the nature where I will do it anyway, but it's, you know, maybe less than it would have been in the past. Although I do have a view that I think there's value in building networks, helping out other people, contributing. I actually organize this regular get together here for a network and build that network, and it's sort of become an organic thing I don't own anymore. It's just sort of had a life of its own, which is great, which is kind of the whole purpose of it. So I think I give something, and I don't necessarily always expect to get back, because I think the grand, in the grand sort of universe will sort of, you'll get payback for that on the basis of what goes around comes around. And those people who are only ever taking and not giving, unfortunately, they'll probably get to a point where they realize, hopefully, that they need to also contribute to that and to help others. And as Anssi said, sometimes it's about the offering. It's not necessarily always taken up, but at least you're thinking of what value can I add? How can I offer something? And having thought about it, whether someone takes you up on that or not is different. I mean, the other thought I come to, and this is around, I come back to that, how to win friends and influence people, which is that book by Dale Carnegie, which goes back, I think it's published in the 30s. And some of the principles around that about, and again, if you read that, or even a summary of that book, it's all about what we were talking about, and maybe in different forms. Maybe it's modernized. It's easier to do these days, electronically linked in, but the same kind of principles, because ultimately it's all about getting things done, moving your career, finding a way to get something done, helping other people out. And it all boils down to that, because the people who don't manage to win friends and influence people end up not being able to get much done, and they don't progress in their career, or they find in an organization they can't find people who want to work with them because they just haven't been able to do it.
And actually, really quickly, just Stephen references a reading, and one of the things that he and I had to read was this article. I can't remember who it was by, but it was called "The Strength of Weak Links," and it was quite it was paradigm shifting, because you kind of get this sense that if I have strong links with a few people, it's more likely to lead in better outcomes for me, because we'll all kind of look out for each other. And actually what this article was espousing was it's fine to have strong links, but actually the information flow and the benefits, the job referrals and jobs, etc., they actually come from weaker links. Those weak links that you've still kept warm, you still speak to, but that's where the next job is more likely to come from, not your best friend that you see every Tuesday. And that was a real game shifter for me, because it kind of, again, speaking about the different levels, yes, you've got your good friends, you've got people who there's unconditional love. I'm not trying to get anything from you, and you're not trying to get anything from me. We're just tight. But then there's this system, this ecosystem of people who there's two-way value being derived, and actually those weak links, that guy who I meet once a year and we have a coffee and chat, that actually results in him getting a job, right? Or an assignment. So yeah, just to remind people of that as well.
Absolutely. And what you're saying also ties into what Ildiko is saying here, because she's talking about a scenario where after a couple of messages, interactions, it sort of dies out, or the intensity sort of wanes. So you could potentially talk about that falling into the weak link bracket, as it were. So my thoughts, Ildiko, will be, obviously you can't force the person, maybe to also think about the possibilities. Perhaps heavy workload is hindering them from being as engaged. If you think there's value in investing in that, you can't force things. If you think there's value in that, there are a number of possibilities. Number one, to continue to be patient. Number two, to pace yourself in terms of engagement. Some relationships, there's value that can be exchanged on a weekly basis, daily basis, monthly basis, but some, it could be quarterly, it could be on an annual basis. So just thinking where that might be falling into. And again, considering something valuable that could intrigue that person in terms of their industry or in terms of their role, and teasing that out to them from time to time. So and just watching how things, evolve and seeing what impact that could make, and in terms of getting them to be engaged. So as we begin to come,
the only thing I'd really quickly add to that, I totally agree with you, is just part of this journey is also being able to cope with rejection, right? So I've had 6 jobs, but I've been for over 100 interviews, let alone, let's think of how many applications I've had, right? There are some interactions, it doesn't matter how much you like the person, you think they're the best thing since sliced bread, for whatever reason, they don't respond to your messages, they don't have time for you, and you have to be comfortable. You have to be comfortable with that, and I'll definitely say that in the early parts of my journey, that was something I had to overcome. But now I'm okay, cool. If it just didn't work out, we don't gel, they're not interested, that's fine. I'll move on. I'll find someone that is, right?
Absolutely.
Can I just build on that? Because I think actually some of my experience around this has actually come from being made redundant a couple of times in my career. So you've been made redundant, now you have to go out and find a job. And it's the realization that no one is going to come and knock on your door and say, hey, Stephen, here's a job. That your destiny is in your own hands. And actually this is it happened actually when I was in Australia, and I went there, and I had a network, but it was not very developed. So I have to, in a place where I don't have relatives, I don't have family, I don't have historical school or university friends. So, and I had to develop that networking kind of ways of doing things by going and knocking on doors. And actually one of a very good job I got, it ended up being through a search firm, but it was a person who knew a person who knew a person who knew a person. It was 5th person removed that I ended up meeting this person from a search firm, who said to, when I went to them, they said, Stephen, I think you might be the right guy in the right place at the right time. And that ended up materializing into a job. But that was, and that was meeting people, having a purpose, having an outcome, having a message, saying, if you can't give me help, or do you know a couple of people who can? And actually spiraling, got to the point where that network and that search ended up with so many people I couldn't keep up with it. And I realized I really enjoyed meeting strangers, and I really enjoyed trying to find connections, and then using that network to help other people to do things. And actually that network still recently had me help someone to get a job with someone else, in someone I met in Hong Kong who got a job with someone in Sweden. And it was through all those connections years later.
Awesome. Okay, Stephen, you've reflected in terms of your journey, and the different countries you've worked, and so you network broadly, and you have your strategy of maintaining, in your own words, your Nigerian friends for aspirational purposes, and some other friends and all of that. We've had that conversation before. So as we begin to close the loop, and we have 3 minutes left, I just wondered what 2 tips each of you have in terms of cross-cultural networking, such that something you think will be useful in connecting is not received in a different way. Any quick tips, a couple from you, cross-cultural networking?
That's a really tough one to end on. I would say be aware of your own views, your own misconceptions. When I walk in a room, I always challenge myself. When I walk in a room, it's far easier for me to look for the Black person, try and gravitate towards them and have a conversation, because she's more comfortable. And if there is a room half full of Black people and non-Black people, I always try and encourage myself initially to go where I am more challenged. So for me, it'd be the non-Black people, right? Because once I've done that, I get comfortable. I find there's connection points. Always focus on the things that you have in common, because the funny thing is that cross-cultural, you'll find that the other person is thinking exactly the same thing, right? So if you try and find the common ground, then all of a sudden you'll connect more. But just be more open-minded is what I would say.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So just to build on that, I would say, yeah, absolutely. What I tend to do with people is I try to find some connection I have with that person, some common ground. So a guy I met yesterday, our common ground was talking about football. That was, and so we ended up, once we started talking about football, we found that we had lots of stuff to say, and we pulled other people into that. And then, then it gravitated to other things. I think the other thing is also listening skills. And a boss of mine, I remember one time years ago, said to me, Stephen, my advice to you, to anyone is use your ears and your mouth in the proportion of which you've been given them, as in listen twice as much as you speak. And I think it's a really great piece of advice, listening to what others have to say and not always actually having to talk, and asking good questions and making the other person feel important. And it's not all about you all the time. I think that's helpful.
Absolutely. On that note, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you so much, Stephen, Ansu, and everyone for joining. This is 6 Degrees of Separation, talking about networking, networks, power of social capital. And this is part of the Ayo Adegbiji and Friends series. In previous editions, we've talked about managing up in a post-COVID world. We've talked about breaking into the C-suite, and that is on YouTube. So if you do a search, you will find myself and a couple of CEOs in that conversation. If you would like us to have a conversation on something that is up on your heart, relevant to you, feel free to reach out, send us a topic, and we will have conversation around that once we deem it useful. So this is what I promised earlier on for everyone who waits till the very end. Good things wait. Good things, are available for those who wait till the end. If you can grab your phone and scan the QR code at the top left angle, you will be taken to my website where you have my blog, and there are a few things to read there. So feel free to scan the QR code and it will take you there. I am, as said earlier on, I'm an executive coach. I have my private practice in addition to working for a business school. My private practice is called Emerge. These are some of the feedback from some people that I've worked with. Good to see 5 stars. So if you would like support in terms of your career strategy, leadership development, or a networking strategy, perhaps you are self-sabotaging in previous networks and you want to optimize your network, we can have that conversation. Feel free to reach out to me. Maybe you also need to consider the affirmations you could be making before a networking scenario. Feel free, we can have that conversation. Have you been self-sabotaging? Do you have cognitive distortions impeding your social capital? We can also have that conversation. Feel free to reach out. On that note, I want to say a massive thank you to my guests today and all the friends and family members that I see across the room. And let's keep in touch. Let's keep talking. Wish you all the very best as you leverage the power of social networks and 6 degrees of separation, so-called. Thank you very much. See you around.
Thank you. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you.
Bye.